Yet the guilt still lingered, for she'd been so taken up with her own concerns and with Daniel that she hadn't really noticed how badly Paula had taken Saul's enforced departure. She turned away from the mirror and slipped on her jacket so she could surreptitiously undo the button on her skirt. The waistband was uncomfortably tight all of a sudden. "I'm dreading the day Daniel is shipped out," she said quietly. "His training's almost over, so it will probably be quite soon." She gave a tremulous sigh. "From now on, every moment we can snatch is precious." Paula's gaze was direct. "I know you're sleeping with him, April," she said softly, "but I do hope you took my advice and went to the clinic." April went scarlet and couldn't look her friend in the eye, for she had gone, eventually, and it had all been horribly embarrassing. "Of course I did," she muttered. "When exactly? Before or after you stayed out all night with him?" "What is this?" she asked on a shaky laugh. "The third degree?" "If you want to call it that," Paula replied solemnly. "Look, April, I don't mean to be bossy and overbearing, but I care about you, and I know how these things can get out of hand. A moment of passion overrides common sense, and before you know it, you're in trouble." "I'm fine, really," April insisted. Paula crossed the room and took her hand. "Are you?" she said softly. April felt concerned. She desperately wanted, needed, to talk to someone, but although Paula would understand, she couldn't face the shame of having to confess how stupid she'd been. "Just drop it, Paula," she said sharply. Paula folded her arms, her gaze steady, and her chin set determinedly. "Not this time, April. You see, I've heard you being sick every morning for the past week or so, and I know that you haven't been sleeping well. You're off your food, suddenly hate the taste of tea, and you haven't used any sanitary towels for at least 2 months. April struggled to stay calm in the face of her friend's determination to get to the truth. "Who said you could go through my personal things?" she countered. "I'd run out, and I thought you wouldn't mind if I used a couple of yours until I got fresh supplies," Paula said flatly. As the silence stretched between them, her expression softened. "You're pregnant, aren't you?" April was determined not to cry, or let the emotional storm she'd been concealing over the past few weeks boil over. "Don't be silly, Paula," she said. "Your imagination's running away with you. It was just a stomach upset, that's all." Paula regarded her evenly and gave a deep sigh. "When you feel you can talk to me honestly about it, you know where I am," she said sadly. "But don't leave it too long, April, because if you do, then I won't be able to help you." April didn't really understand how Paula could possibly help her, and she didn't want to appear naive and even more foolish by asking her. "We're going to be late, and Daniel will be waiting," she muttered, as she checked her watch and reached for her cap. They left the house and walked quickly down the street to catch the bus into town. There was a heavy and unusual silence between them as they sat side by side on the uncomfortably narrow seats, each focused determinedly away from the other. April's thoughts were in a whirl. Paula didn't know that she'd sneaked off base to visit a civilian clinic more than once. The second time they'd given her a pregnancy test. It had proved positive, and now she was over 3 months pregnant. The news had come as a terrible, frightening shock, and she'd prayed that the test had been wrong, that there'd been some awful mix-up. But as the weeks had gone on and the changes in her body had become more apparent, she'd withdrawn into herself, the doubts and fears as to how Daniel would take the news haunting her days and bringing torment to her nights. She clenched her fists on her lap, thinking how stupid she'd been not to take Paula's advice earlier and go to the birth control clinic before she'd succumbed to Daniel's irresistible charms, and not 2 days later. By then, although she hadn't known it, the damage had already been done. And yet, despite the wondrous, terrifying things that were happening to her body, she was too shy and embarrassed to discuss it even with Paula. It was such a personal thing, something that she needed to share with Daniel before she confided in Paula, for this was their baby, made from the love they'd found in one another. Tonight she would finally pluck up the courage to tell him, she decided firmly. And yet the doubts and fears that had troubled her over the past weeks began to cloud the faith she had in him to do the right thing, and she had to